There's been a lot of talk this offseason about Trae Young and his future with the Atlanta Hawks. Should the Hawks continue trying to build around him as their franchise piece? Should they trade him and try to capitalize on his value? But to me, the biggest question when it comes to this debate is Trae Young still a franchise caliber, all NBA caliber point guard that you want to build your franchise around? We're going to break this down into 3 separate parts so that we can try and get a bird's eye view of kind of where Trae's at this point in his career. 1, what are the things that Trae can still do at a very good / elite level? 2, what are the things that Trae just simply can't do very well? And 3, does this current skill set translate into a player that the Hawks should continue trying to build around? We're going to cover all of that. If you guys find yourself enjoying this video or you find it informative, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really does help me out a ton. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the stuff that Trae is good at. There's no question that Trae is still one of the top passers and playmakers in the entire league. Regardless of how his scoring efficiency looks, which we're going to talk about later, the playmaking prowess, accuracy that he possesses as a passer, and his feel and ability to manipulate defenses is still very much one of the best weapons in his arsenal. For all the criticisms that you may be able to have with Trae Young, his ability to not only make but create high-value passes is among the best in the NBA. His understanding of how to leverage certain defensive coverages makes it to where he's almost always got an answer for whatever the defense throws at him. Let's look at this possession as an example. The Hawks are going to be setting up for a double drag action, but Trae uses a really subtle up fake to get his defender to bite on the screen, allowing him the chance to get going downhill. He runs into the strong side dig, but he has the ability to keep a tight handle through traffic, putting Claxton in a really tough spot where he's got Capella coming at him on the roll and Trae coming at him with the ball. This is going to force Smith Jr. into having to help off of the wing, and Trae is going to keep his eyes locked onto the hoop so that he keeps the defense pulled in and focused on him, and it creates a wide open look on the wing for Bogdanović. Now again, we're going to see another example where the Hawks are going to run a double drag and Jabari Smith is going to blow the coverage with Saddiq Bey slipping the screen. Now, this is a really difficult pass because if Trae pivots back to adjust to try and make this pass, it's going to give Jabari enough time to recover onto Saddiq Bey. So Trae has pretty much just a split second to make this pass over the top, and he places it perfectly for Bey to finish it. It's one of those passes where it looks easy, but that's because Trae makes it look easy. This ability to keep defenses on a string is one of his most valuable assets, especially considering he gets 2 on the ball virtually at will most of the time when he's operating in the pick and roll. And that means he's forcing defenses to have to solve a lot of problems in a matter of seconds. Here he's being defended by Amen Thompson, and then after this initial screen rejection, he's going to get some separation, and this allows him to pull Amen back into the rescreen from Johnson, forcing Green to stay pulled closer to the level, and this plays right into Trae's hand of creating a pass to Johnson on the roll now that Trae was able to get 2 on the ball. Not only is he a nightmare to guard in the pick and roll, he's also such a dangerous driver. Trae is ridiculously quick with the ball in his hands, and he actually ranks top 10 in drives per game and clocks the 5th most assists on drives in the NBA. It makes sense though when you watch the film that he can generate so many points for his teammates when he's driving because he knows exactly how to get the defense to put 2 bodies on him, and that's exactly what he's looking for. On this play, he's going to run what's called a get action with Capella, forcing Shai to have to navigate the screen, and it puts him behind Trae. And once Capella gets past this initial dig, Chet has to figure out how to deal with both Capella and Trae. Chet actually does a good job of keeping Trae guessing, but Trae is just waiting for Chet to flip his hips and commit, and that's all that he needs to see to hit the wraparound pass to Capella. I like this play because you can see how Trae tells Okongwu to stay put instead of coming back up to set a screen, and this is because Trae knows that he can get by Jeff Green and force the help off of Okongwu, and that's going to give Okongwu a clear lane to the basket once Trae finds him on the cut. He's just so good at knowing how his movements with the ball in his hands impacts what defenses are going to do and how that can make life easier for his teammates. He's just waiting for teams to overhelp for just a split second onto him so that he can find his teammates to finish the play. It's a great sign that Trae is still able to leverage his playmaking to the extent that he does, despite the scoring efficiency being shakier than what we've seen him be capable of in the past. Now, even though Trae is oftentimes criticized for his efficiency, the reality is that he was actually above league average in terms of true shooting percentage last year as a scorer. and the important parts of his scoring game have started to come back around as well. He was one of the most efficient pull-up three-point shooters in the NBA last year, and this is one of the reasons that his playmaking is as lethal as it is. When you're able to hit threes off the dribble like he's able to, you start forcing teams to have to use more aggressive coverages in an attempt to limit the amount of space that you have coming off of a screen. As we've already seen in earlier clips, that just plays into Trae's hands and allows him to hit guys on the short roll without issue. But on the flip side, he's going to punish you if you don't have somebody showing at the level of the screen to deter a shot. And I say at the level, but realistically, you kind of need to be playing above the level of the screen in order to truly deter Trae from taking these shots. We see all the time where he'll receive a screen, and once he recognizes that there's not going to be a switch, he's just going to use that space and pull the shot. It's the same situation here, but even though there is technically a switch, Javonte Green doesn't play high enough towards the level, and Trae's going to let it fly. This time, there's a switch with Mitchell prepared to shut down Trae, going right off of the screen. But since Trae knows that Mitchell is expecting him to go to his right, he instead is going to take a sidestep to the left, giving him all the space in the world to get the shot off. It's all of these little intricacies and counters that Trae has at his disposal that make him such a dangerous shot creator when he's coming off of a screen. Additionally, he's still one of the most efficient shooters on floaters in the league. I'm going to get to his mid-range and rim efficiency in a minute, but regardless of how his scoring efficiency has fluctuated from other areas of the floor, he has consistently been very good on floaters, which is of course great for his ability to abuse drop coverage. All right, so now that we've talked about the good, we're going to talk about the not so good. I know all of you were waiting for it, but in case you were wondering, yes, Trae Young is still not a good defender. There have been certain small things that Trae has absolutely improved on, but he is still nowhere close to a good defender. And trust me, I really tried to find as much as I could. And no matter how you slice it, it's pretty much impossible to make the argument that he is anything other than a negative defender. I will say he does have solid hands and can occasionally nab a steal here and there. He actually averaged a career high 1.3 steals per game, but yeah, he's just not good enough to hold his own when teams are targeting him, and he can get targeted a lot. Atlanta's defense was 4.3 points per 100 possessions better with him off the floor versus on the floor, so it's not the biggest swing in the world, but considering their offense is only 2.1 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor versus off, his defensive shortcomings are currently not being outweighed by his offensive contributions, according to these numbers. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah, on an individual level, he's definitely not doing anything to help them on the defensive end, and more often than not, he's hurting them. On the offensive end, the version of Trae Young that we've seen over the last two seasons is not the same version that we saw his season after their surprise Eastern Conference Finals run. What really sets Trae apart now versus what we saw from him in the past is his inside the arc scoring. I mentioned earlier that the floater is still there, which is great, but his finishing isn't close to where you'd want it to be for the volume of shots at the rim that he attempts. Granted, he's never been an above 60% finisher, but that 2022 season where he finished at a 59% clip is a rate that I think you live with if you're the Hawks, and I think it's what he needs to get back to. But perhaps the biggest contrast in his scoring game from that stellar 2022 season compared to now is the fact that Trae was an automatic mid-range shooter back then, and now he's barely shooting league average on them. That 52% field goal percentage on long mid-range looks put him in the 96th percentile in efficiency. That's wild for any player, but for a 6'1" point guard, it's even crazier. The fact of the matter is that shooting touch just hasn't returned. It kind of makes you wonder if that ridiculously high efficiency was more of a one-time thing as opposed to a sustainable part of his game. The glaring issue with Trae that gets brought up probably more than anything over the past 2 years is the concerns about his ability to play off ball. Him and Dejounte were never really able to make it work as an offensive duo, and it's very clear they operated better when one or the other was on the bench. So the common talking point has been this idea that Trae simply can't play off ball, and I'll push back on that a little bit. I think Trae can play off ball, but you're going to be sacrificing what he does best if you ask him to operate off ball, because he's just significantly better on ball. He's not an active enough of an off-ball mover to really move the needle, and unless you're specifically drawing up half-court plays designed to assist him, he's not going to be subconsciously using his off-ball gravity to play make for his teammates. Now, all of this leads us into the third part of this discussion. Is Trae Young a player that you want to build around if you're the Hawks? I think for the answer to that question to be yes, they need to seriously address the defensive problems first and foremost. Trading Dejounte and getting Dyson Daniels was a step in the right direction. I think 𝙖𝙗𝙤𝙪 will be a solid defensive wing for them, and they probably have decent enough youth and depth to start to make an emphasis on incorporating more of a defensive identity. Trae is still very much an all-star caliber player, but also it's been 2 years since we've seen the best version of Trae Young. So I think that this upcoming season is going to be very telling now that he gets to go back to operating as the full-time #1 guy. Do you guys think that the Hawks are going to end up trading Trae Young? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really does help. Regardless, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.